Mm, okay, hold on. Let me actually share this video really quickly. Hold on. Let me see if this is going public. Mm, Is this actually going public? That's what I want to see. Hold on. Mm, okay. Is this public? Let's see. Yeah, no, it's public. Okay. Okay. So I don't know how many people are actually going to tune into this. I hope that the screen is actually sharing. That way I can actually do this in the best way possible. But the reason why I was doing live today um, is because we're going to be doing a little bit of a reaction. And the reason why we're doing this reaction once again is to my most recent video, which was the Canelo Alvarez in a cherry pick fight. And I wanted to respond to some comments here, um, because I've dissected many Canelo Alvarez fights. I've dissected overall the quote unquote resumes. Hopefully, you guys can leave down comments down in the comment section as well. I'm not really sure what the hell all is going on here. It is not alerting me of anything. So, anyways, let me know if you guys can hear me. Hopefully you guys can. Where the hell are the comments for this? Comments. Yeah, well, that's what we're going to be talking about, Mr. Jesse. That's what we're going to be talking about right now. Can y'all hear me? Because it usually allows me to see this. Okay, good. All right, good. All right. Well, so we're going to go through this comment section. I'm sharing my quote unquote screen. I may even have some of you join in the comment section here in a bit. The reason why I wanted to do this video is because I've been meaning to do a video like this for a while, where I dissect not only the resume of Canelo Alvarez, and for those of you that have seen my videos about Canelo Alvarez for a very long time, you know that hey, salute Carlos, how are y'all doing? You know that in my view that Canelo Alvarez has had the most extensive resume of the past 10 plus years. I've recently had a commenter whenever I've had certain Canelo Alvarez videos, I believe by the name of Dantra, and I wanted to respond not only to some of his comments, I wanted to respond to some of your guys' comments as well. So I'm gonna respond to some of these comments on here, as well as some of your comments on the StreamYard thing, and I'm going to try to do this. And for those of you that are wondering why I'm doing a live and not just posting this, it's just easier because it's going to take up way too much space on my device. But anyways, okay, so let's get straight into it. So once again, the topic of conversation is who has debatably the greatest resume of this era. Some, of course, would debate Crawford. Some would debate Usyk. Some would debate Canelo, and of course, you have Inoue as well. I've already debated that those are the four elite fighters of this era. Now, my thing is that Canelo Alvarez, in my personal view, he has the most elite era out of anyone of this particular era. Now, let's go into it and let's see some of the comments here. And I want to take a look at this first comment section here. Um, and I actually want to go down to Mr. Dantra and let's see overall what he actually had to say. So let's take a look at this comment here. This is one I actually wanted to address. He said, "Explain why do you give Canelo so much credit for the Billy Joe Saunders win, bro? He had beaten absolutely nobody. Billy Joe only beat David Lemieux. He wasn't no elite A-level fighter, dog. And you can't possibly say Danny Jacobs was in his prime during that fight." Well, first of all, I want to address that first little few sentences right there. Well, a lot of people actually ask me why I give Canelo Alvarez credit for the Billy Joe Saunders win, at least A grade level. Keep in mind, for those of you that don't know enough about Billy Joe Saunders was an undefeated fighter. Not only right before Canelo Alvarez had fought him, he was a legitimate middleweight level champion. I believe that he won the IBF or the WBA title at the middleweight class. Billy Joe Saunders was being talked about at one point in time for a potential super fight with that of Gennady Golovkin or some of the other potential middleweights before he ended up fighting Canelo Alvarez. So when we talk about Billy Joe Saunders, we can say whatever we want to about him. But at the end of the day, Billy Joe Saunders, yes, he was an A grade level fighter. Not only was he a two-weight level division champion, But the thing is that Billy Joe Saunders, and you can even take a look at certain interviews of other fighters' opinions, like for example, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Floyd Mayweather Jr. He stated, excuse me, he stated overall that Billy Joe Saunders, in his view, was a phenomenal fighter. And he said, don't underestimate Billy Joe against Canelo Alvarez. But here's the thing. When you're talking about beating David Lemieux and those guys, David Lemieux, in my view, is not an A-grade level fighter. But the thing is that I never said that David Lemieux was an A-grade level fighter, nor Andy Lee, nor any of the opponents that he beat. The problem is when we're talking about Billy Joe allegedly being so much lower than that of a Jamal Charlo or a Demetrius Bubu Andrade. That's when the issue comes in. Because if we're talking about that, Demetrius Andrade, when we take a look at his past resume, the man never even has a former champion on his resume. Never. Now, if you want to believe that Andrade is a bit better than Billy Joe, that's up to you. And then, of course, we talk about that of Jamal Charlo. When we talk about Jamal Charlo, Charlo's biggest wins in his career, the biggest one is over, what's his name? Julian Williams, I believe, J-Rock, whatever his name was. That is the only debatable A-grade win level in his career. Then you're talking about what? K9 Cornelius Bunridge, not an A-grade level fighter. You're talking about Sergey Derevyanchenko, who already lost, by the way, to Danny Jacobs by the time that Jamal Charlo had fought him. And also, let's address that Danny Jacobs comment really quickly. Let's address that Danny Jacobs. So I've also gotten comments on this saying that Danny Jacobs is not in his prime when Canelo fought him. Well, that can't be the case because Danny Jacobs, what I'm going to say here is that people keep trying to say that there are certain names, quote unquote, like Golovkin or Danny Jacobs, or certain guys that weren't in their quote unquote prime when Canelo had fought them. This argument makes no sense for Danny Jacobs. And the reason why this makes no sense for Danny Jacobs is because Danny Jacobs, first of all, was 31 years old. When you talk about, when he fought Canelo Alvarez, that fight now was 7 years ago. Danny Jacobs is 37 years old now. So, first of all, he was not at an old age. Secondly, if you're going to try to use the argument that he had some sort of slippage, that wouldn't really make any sense either, because the only fight that he had lost or really shown any signs of slippage before the Canelo fight was against Gennady Golovkin. And that was a fight that was, where both fighters were supposed to have problems, because that was going to be a big unification middleweight fight. So once again, that doesn't really make any sense. So a lot of people love to use this point about how Danny already had lost to Gennady Golovkin. Right, but that was a big unification fight. And it's not like Danny got knocked out, within 2 rounds or something like that. Danny Jacobs, or beaten up, as bad as what, say, like what an Amir Khan or what a Kell Brook did before Terrence Bud Crawford fought them. Danny Jacobs was still in his prime. And keep in mind, he had just defeated the undefeated Sergey Derevyanchenko. The same guy that that Jamal Charlo fans and a lot of these guys, they always, love to use the Sergey Derevyanchenko win, to put in Jamal Charlo's pocket, but they won't use it for Danny Jacobs. So yes, Danny Jacobs absolutely was in his prime. In my view, there's no debate about that whatsoever. But anyways, let's continue. So he says, Caleb Plant only had 18 fights. Callum Smith didn't beat anybody. All the people Canelo beat didn't beat didn't beat anybody, bro. Well, okay, let me tell you this. So Caleb Plant, yes, he did only have 18 fights. But the thing is that if we're going to use these standards, we're also going to have to use the same thing with that of Terrence Crawford's most recent opponent, Israel Madrimov. Because Israel Madrimov only had about what, 10, 11 total fights. The thing is about Caleb Plant is that, yeah, we can talk about how he had only 18 level fights. But the thing is about Caleb Plant is that the man beat at least a couple of former champions or champions. People don't remember that Jose Uzcategui, who knocked out one of the Durrell brothers, he was one of the better champions at the time. In fact, the Canelo versus Uzcategui fight was potentially being talked about, I think, and that was going to be a big fight. Caleb Plant went in there and he dominated him. He beat him at least 8 rounds to 4 in what was, I believe, a little bit of an upset. So to say that Caleb Plant actually didn't beat anybody, that doesn't make any sense. Now, if you want to claim that Jose Uzcategui is not an A-grade level fighter, that's up to you. But to say that Caleb Plant just didn't beat anybody, no, I can't agree with that. Callum Smith, let's go to him next, because this is also a very popular argument that people love to use. Callum Smith, for those of you that don't know, he won the Super 6 Series tournament at the super middleweight division. And we're gonna read some of these comments as well. Callum Smith was able to beat Rocky Fielding, I believe, in the first or second round. He was able to knock out George Groves. Those are the guys that he was able to beat. Now, he did have apparently a little bit of a rocky performance against John Ryder. right before he fought Canelo Alvarez. But to state that Callum Smith didn't beat anybody, well, that's not necessarily true. Now, if you want to state that, in your view, that Rocky Fielding is not the best of competition, I would tend to agree with you. But the thing is to say overall that he didn't beat anybody. No, because he did beat George Groves. He did beat George Groves. Groves at that time was a little bit more aged, but at least he was coming off of a victory over that of a Chris Eubank Jr. People don't seem to remember that. Callum Smith, on top of that, was a legitimate light heavyweight fighter. The man really should have never been fighting at 168 pounds in the first place. Now, would I say that Callum Smith, in my view, is the most talented fighter that I've ever seen? No, but he's talented enough in order to knock out George Groves and knock out Rocky Fielding quite quickly. And on top of that, the man was a decent amount bigger than Canelo. So that at the very least has to be an A- level win. And had Andrade or Charlo or one of these guys that they were rooting for, David Benavidez or David Morrell, had one of those guys beaten Callum Smith and he was undefeated, they'd all be calling it an A grade level win. So let's not use this stuff about how Callum Smith nor Caleb Plant beat anybody. Um, and going back to Billy Joe Saunders, um, Billy Joe Saunders, once again, when you take a look at him, not only did he beat David Lemieux, David Lemieux once upon a time was a champion there. Billy and that was pretty much the last point in time where David Lemieux showed some actual greatness or some championship level caliber. Billy Joe embarrassed him. Like he literally won every single round. Like he boxed circles around that man. He completely embarrassed him. For those of you that don't remember. So this narrative that Billy Joe is just this bum or this, hyped up Caucasian fighter, all that is a bunch of bullshit. Billy Joe Saunders, once again, he was one of the best middleweights in the world, and then eventually he went up to 168. Now he was a little bit less impressive at 168 because the man doesn't have elite level power, and on top of that, the man he's not really a natural 168 pounder, but Canelo's not either. So that's why when you talk about that win, yeah, it has to be counted at least as an A- level win because when you take a look at Billy Joe Saunders, the man does have great boxing ability. It's just the thing about him is that he doesn't have elite level power. That's the thing about him. But anyways, let's continue. Plan B to Wash Durrell. Well, he did beat a Wash Durrell, but if you're talking about Caleb Plant, man, and if you're informed, you're not talking about him beating a Wash Durrell. You're talking about him beating Jose Uzcategui or Caleb Truax. Those are the fighters that you're talking about. You're not even bringing up Durrell because that's not something that Caleb Plant did to get his title. Only elite fighters Canelo fought was GGG, Floyd, Bivol, Lara, and that's literally it. Bro lost all those fights. Callum Smith is not an elite fighter. Billy Joe is not elite. He beat nobody. Well, it depends on what you mean by elite. When you talk about, once again, Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith, yes, those guys were A- level wins, and I just described why. Now, when we bring up this narrative, because this is the narrative that people also love to use, is that Canelo has lost all of his biggest fights. Well, of course, the man lost to Floyd and Bivol. He lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr. Of course, he was bigger than Mayweather. But what I also will say is, of course, Canelo Alvarez, he was 23 years old. And on top of that, Canelo Alvarez, he had really only been in one true A-grade level fight at that point in time in his career. I'm not going to state that that's the whole reason as to why Canelo Alvarez lost that fight because of inexperience. Of course, the man was a decent amount bigger in terms of weight. So one could argue that he should have put on a better fight. But this also needs to be addressed. Canelo Alvarez was not at the absolute peak of his career yet. He just wasn't. Now, in my view, is Floyd still a more skilled fighter and a greater fighter than Canelo? Yes, he is, in my personal view. But that also does need to be addressed that Canelo had not hit his absolute peak yet. Because what a lot of these channels, or especially the LDBC and new media ones, or the people that do try to tear down Canelo's resume, what they love to say is that Canelo has never improved over the years, which it doesn't make any sense. Once again, you cannot be a four-weight division champion beat so many A-grade level names, and we're going to keep going through that. And also the Lara situation, that was a very close fight that could have went either way. They gave it to Canelo. The last scorecard, of course, was a little bit too wide, but at the end of the day, they gave it to Lara. Excuse me, they gave it to Canelo. And it was a fight that could have went either way. At the end of the day, you can debate that Lara was not offensive nor active enough within that fight. So just is what it is. Anyway, and the Bivol fight, he was never really supposed to win that fight in the first place. But bringing up Bivol, let me bring this up because Canelo Alvarez at 5'7" with a 71-inch arm reach, even though he balloons up a little bit in weight, what people don't want to talk about, and this is one thing that I will state, Canelo gave Dimitri Bivol still the toughest fight in his career. And Canelo is not a natural light heavyweight fighter at all. Now, he balloons up once again a little bit in weight, ballooned up even heavier for that fight in order to try to bully Bivol, but it went against him, and it ruined even more of his stamina. The partial reason Canelo lost to Bivol was the combined skills, but of course also the combined size. Bivol is 6 foot, Canelo is 5'7". Bivol has, I think a 72-inch reach, Canelo 71. He was never supposed to win that fight in the first place. Dimitri Bivol, and let me also state this, because many people, they love to compare the Crawford and Madrimov and the Canelo versus Bivol fight. They're not comparable. They're not comparable whatsoever. And the reason why they're not comparable is because Madrimov was what was he? He was he had 11 fights in, and he had no fights against any of the actual top 10 contenders of that division. He had no fights against any of them. He didn't have fights against Tim Tszyu. He didn't have fights against Fundora. He didn't have fights against Virgil Ortiz. He didn't have fights against anybody. So we really don't know how good that he is. Now, I would still count it as an A- level win. But when you talk about Canelo versus Bivol, it's not comparable. Not only because of the size, because Crawford not only was taller and lengthier than that of Madrimov, but Crawford, Madrimov is a little bit girthier, sure, but at the end of the day, Madrimov is not some super huge dude for 154. He's just not. Like Dante and some of these other guys, they tried to claim all this bullshit about how Madrimov was way bigger. No, he wasn't. Bivol was a decent amount bigger than Canelo than that fight with Crawford and Madrimov. It's not even comparable. Once again, the only way that you'd be able to compare that fight is if Crawford went up in weight and fought someone like a Janibek. That'd be the only way to compare that fight. But once again, what nobody talks about is that Canelo Alvarez gave Dimitri Bivol the toughest fight of his career. And I thought that Canelo only won about 3 to 4 rounds in that fight, but he gave Bivol a tougher fight than Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. He gave him a tougher fight than Joe Smith Jr. or John Pascal or Sullivan Barrera. He gave him a tougher fight than all those guys. That's something that people never mention. A dude who is 5'7" with a 71-inch arm reach that really belongs more at the middleweight division. He should not be giving a very great pedigree light heavyweight fighter like a Dimitri Bivol. He should not be giving him the toughest fight of his career. But because of his exemplary skill set and his great boxing ability, he was able to do that. So that's one thing that I have to state there. But anyways, let me check my thing real quick. Okay. Oh wow, I have a whole bunch of comments here. Hold on, let me check y'all out. Mr. Lemon 26. I remember at the time GGG versus Canelo rematch was make or break fight for pound #1 status. Absolutely. Come on, bros, excusing the fight because he was 23. Well, Mr. Dantra, what I'm gonna state is this: I don't think Canelo was at the absolute peak of his career. That's what I'm gonna tell you there. But what I will also state is this: I don't think that it's a complete excuse as to why Canelo Alvarez lost the way that he did. Because to be fair, there has been times where certain fighters, when they were younger, they beat that fighter that was a little bit older. So at the end of the day, Floyd Mayweather, in my view, he just is more skilled than Canelo. There's just certain things that he can do that Canelo cannot do. I think that definitely is a part of it. But the reason why I brought that up is because many people, once again, they try to they try to give you this shit about how all these other fighters are adjusting and becoming better fighters, whether they're taking losses or not. And then Canelo is just apparently staying in the same place, and that's not the truth. If you've taken a look at his career over the past several years, over the past 10 years, you can tell that he's gotten better. So that's the reason why I brought that up. Let's see. Canelo didn't even win a round against Bivol, LML 72 and 71. Yeah, huge difference in size, buddy. Well, it's not really about the arm reach as much. It's more about the height. And it's also more about Bivol being more of a natural light heavyweight. Anyways, but let's see. Let's see. Everyone peaks at different times. Yeah, no, I agree. While injured. That's actually something I want to bring up. I'm not quite sure how injured Canelo Alvarez was actually. That's something overall that I actually want to bring up. I'm not sure how injured Canelo was. Now, he states that he was. Now, I don't know how injured he was actually. That could just be an excuse. I don't know. But is that the main reason why I think Canelo lost to Bivol? No. But once again, Canelo was able to put more rounds against Bivol than any of the other opponents in Bivol's career. That does have to be mentioned. Let's see. Let's see. How are you not in your prime at 44 fights, bro? That's what I want to know. You saying Canelo fought 44 bum fights? Actually, yes. Mr. Dantra, what I'm going to tell you. This is one thing I want to state about Canelo Alvarez's resume. Canelo's resume did not start becoming A grade level until he fought Austin Trout. That's one thing that I want to talk about right there. Because when we talk about those fights like against Carlos Baldemir, when we talk about those fights against Sugar Shane Mosley, those guys at that point in time are not A grade level fighters. Those guys are not A grade level fighters. Unbiased as always. Thank you, Mister Paul. I won't I won't butcher your last name. I'm not always the greatest at pronouncing last names, but thank you, sir. And he showed the surgery scars. It's very possible he was injured. It's very possible. I don't doubt it. So I'll take your word for it. But the thing is, was once again, Canelo Alvarez. By the time that Floyd had fought Canelo, he had just been in more championship level fights, and that just sometimes happens. It happens in sports. It happened with Canelo in his most recent fight against Munguia. Munguia had about what 30 something fights, but he had nowhere near the amount of championship level experience as Canelo because Canelo actually fights real competition. At least he has in his career. I think that it was a great setup fight for Canelo to fight Trout. I think that Floyd once again is a greater fighter than Canelo and more skilled at the even at the best of their peaks. But I also do think that the inexperience did play a little bit of a factor, just a little bit, just a decent amount. But anyways, let's get into this. I wanna take a look at some of these replies. Um, so let's see. Uh, so this Claudio Monreal said, "Don't black fight. Give credit for Crawford beating a guy with 10 fights who never beat anyone with the pulse." Let's see Mr. Dantra's response here. Madrimov had over 400 amateur fights and won all of them. Lomachenko had 10 fights when he lost to Salido. Well, actually, no, he didn't have 10 fights when he lost to Salido. That was the second loss in his career. But I know what you're getting at. You're talking about when Lomachenko was looked at as pound for pound. So y'all can call Lomachenko pound for pound the greatest with only 10 fights, but Madrimov is a bum just because he had only 10 fights. All fighters at one point had 10 fights doesn't measure them as a fighter. However, what does is his Olympic background and his amateur background over 400 fights. Well, we have to be careful with that because certain fighters, when they're in the Olympics or when they have great amateur pedigrees, that does not always translate to boxing because we've seen many guys that were Olympic, greats or guys that were very high level in the Olympics, Audley Harrison, Ivan Redkach, and then they come to professional boxing and they never become anything. So we can't always go by that. Big Bang Zhang, for example, I believe that he's a silver medalist in that of the Olympics or the amateurs. He's never been a champion. Now he's a decent heavyweight boxer, but the man, of course, you can't claim him to be on the same level. What I'm going to state is this: let's talk about Lomachenko very quickly, because people also bring this up. They bring this up and they say, well, why was Lomachenko counted as possibly number one pound for pound when he had about 11 or 12 fights? I'll tell you why, and it's not that hard to figure out. Lomachenko was thrown to the lions immediately. Madrimov was not. When you talk about Madrimov getting his title, and he's only ever won one title in his career, Madrimov was pretty much given that title the opportunity because Jermell Charlo had to kind of retire, and all those titles were vacated. So all those titles are basically up for opportunity. Lomachenko was thrown in with guys like Salido. He was thrown in guys like Gary Russell Jr. He was thrown in with guys like Guillermo Rigondeaux. He was thrown in there with guys like Jorge Linares. He was thrown in there with guys eventually like Jose Pedraza, Nicholas Walters. Some of those guys were A-grade level fighters. At least Walters, Russell, Guillermo Rigondeaux, and in my view, debatably Jorge Linares. So you have to take a look at who they fought, not just the amount of fights that they have. Lomachenko was fighting champion after champion after champion, and he was fighting some legit A-grade level fighters and making them look destitute. So that's the difference. Let's go to this next comment here because this is also something that I want to talk about. The same reason Ward got credit for beating all European fighters. Let's see Dontra's response. He beat them in the Super Six, and they all had fought each other. Canelo fought guys who had fought absolutely nobody. Ward beat all those dudes who were fighting the best of the best and dominated them. That's a totally different thing. Don't compare Ward to Canelo because Ward absolutely ages above Canelo in every way possible. Well, I don't agree that Ward is above Canelo in every way possible. There's actually certain categories that you could debate that both have over the other. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. So let's talk about this because what I will state is this, in my personal view. And then I'm gonna go back to the StreamYard comments a little bit, and then I'm going to read some of y'all's comments. So the thing is with Andre SG Ward is I think that he's an all-time great level fighter. He was in a very tough Super Six tournament. He was in there with Mikkel Kessler and Carl Frosch and a couple of other guys. Those guys at least were A-grade level fighters. That being stated, does it appear that Andre Ward is getting a little bit more credit for beating Caucasian or European fighters than, say, a Canelo, especially from some of these channels? Yes, absolutely. And what you'll notice is from Dante's Boxing Nation or some of these other guys, when you have a Crawford or when you have a Devin Haney or someone like that facing a Caucasian fighter, all of a sudden these guys are super dangerous or these killers. But if Canelo Alvarez or Inoue does it, then all of a sudden, they're these bums or they're not known, blah, blah, blah. So it's clear that these channels have a little bit of biasness as well. When you want to talk about the discussion about who's greater between Canelo and Andre Ward, that's a tough one. I think that both are all-time great fighters, but at the end of the day, Canelo may have the slight advantage. There's certain things skill-wise that both fighters would have over the other. I think Andre Ward would definitely have the feet over Canelo. But the thing is that when you talk about the resume, I would say that Canelo has the more extensive resume. He has more A-grade names on his list. I think Andre Ward has at least 4 A-grade level names, which is pretty good for his career. I would count Mikhail Kessler, Carl Frosch, Sergey Kovalev, and Chad Dawson. I would count those guys. I wouldn't count Arthur Abraham as an A-grade level fighter. So but we're going to talk about Canelo's resume in a minute. But Canelo, on top of that, was unified in a weight class. He's a full-weight division champion, and he was, for his size, he wasn't really supposed to do that. So you're talking about a very special fighter. Let me go back to the comments really quickly. Okay. So, let's see. My whole thing is Chavez fought 23-year-olds when he was 33. That's younger than what Mayweather was, and he still couldn't beat De La Hoya or Zhu, even when they weren't fully experienced yet. Okay, well, Dantra, as to your response for that, this is my thing on Oscar. And this is why I've called Oscar De La Hoya one of the more overrated fighters within boxing history. Oscar De La Hoya, he was severely bigger than Chavez. Like when you when you take a look at Oscar, that man looked like a fucking welterweight in there with Chavez and Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker. Though, like this is why Oscar only gets a certain amount of credit from me. When you talk about beating those guys, because Oscar's one of these fighters to where he can beat great smaller fighters like Chavez and Pernell Whitaker. And honestly, that Pernell Whitaker fight was debatable on whether he really won that one. But once he started moving up the weight classes, he lost to Trinidad in a controversial decision, but I thought he made it a bit too close. He lost to Sugar Shane Mosley in the first fight. By the way, Sugar Shane Mosley moved up 2 weight classes and beat Oscar. Now, of course, Canelo lost to Mayweather, but Mayweather's on a whole different level compared to Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley has a lot of holes in his game. Mayweather has very, very few. Debatably the most skilled fighter that I've seen. So that's something that I'm going to talk to you about there. Chavez, like the wins that De La Hoya has over Chavez, to me, they're impressive, but only to a certain degree. And that's why I always talk about Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez, and I say, well, let's see actually how great they are within time. That's what I want to see, because it don't impress me that much when you can beat only Lomachenko, but then you're not beating guys that are your own same size. Anyways, let's see. Mr. Lemon 26 agreed. In my opinion, none of these things translate into pro boxing. It's rare. Well, it's certainly not something that's always confirmed. In your opinion, who has the best resume in boxing today? I think that Canelo still has the best resume in boxing today. But if you're talking about a newer fighter on the come up that is a part of the newer generation, that's kind of tough. Honestly, it might be Teofimo Lopez. He's kind of he's kind of looked like shit lately. But the man does have Josh Taylor, Vasily Lomachenko, and a couple other names on his resume. I gotta give it to him, but he's not looked great. Canelo probably has the best resume right now, but would you say Crawford is second? That's tough. That's a tough conversation. I would say it's between Crawford and Usyk. Crawford, in my view, I've already stated this. Crawford has 5 A-grade level wins in my view. He has Postal, he has Gamboa, he has Porter, he has Errol Spence, and he has Israel Madrimov. And some of those, some would debate maybe is not completely A-grade. That's up to you. But the Alexander Usyk one, I think that he deserves a spot in there as well. Anyways, so when you talk about Usyk, okay, here are the A-grade wins that I give Usyk. I give him Murat Gassiev because Gassiev has only ever lost twice in his career. He's only ever lost to Usyk, and on top of that, he's lost to, I believe, a heavyweight fighter, Marco Huck. So he was never supposed to be there in the first place. On top of that, Murat Gassiev knocked out the very dangerous Junior Dorticos. For those of you that don't remember, he was an undefeated Cuban fighter that was knocking out everybody. And that's who Murat Gassiev knocked out. Usyk was able to beat him. I also give him Glowacki because he knocked out Marco Huck, and he was a very decently technical boxer. Usyk beat him. Of course, I have to give him AJ Anthony Joshua. I, of course, have to give him Tyson Fury. So those are about 4 A-grade wins right there. Tony Bellew is it's on the fence. I'm not really quite sure if you count that 100% as an A-grade level win. And I'm sure there's another one that I'm missing. Um, the one who has the best resume right after that is either Usyk or Crawford. But I will state this: Usyk was able to do something that I've not seen anyone really be able to do ever since Mayweather and Sugar Ray Leonard. He was actually able to beat an A-grade level fighter that was a decent amount bigger than him, like a fighter that like and not just in terms of weight, like height, reach, all that stuff. So Usyk is between Usyk and Crawford. But let's see. Ward is an all-time great fighter, sure, but I disagree on the all-time list. He is better than Canelo. So what if Canelo lost? Still fought overall, better resume. I somewhat agree with that. I think it's a debate about who's better as a fighter, but in terms of resume, I agree. It has to go with Canelo. But let's see. Damn, so many comments. I appreciate the comments, by the way, but I'm trying to catch up to all of them. I agree. I agree with the double standards in boxing, but it goes both ways. It's not just black fans who do it. Mexicans support their fighters too. Well, absolutely, and I've commented on that as well. I've actually done a few videos as of recent talking about the double standards that some black fighters have to go through. Mr. Dontre, you should watch my video most recently about Jose Benavidez calling Crawford boring. Ward also beat Dawson, who was an elite fighter too, by the way. Yeah, I counted that as one of his A-grade wins. But you know what? If we're also going to go by these standards of talking about beating a guy that wasn't quite in their prime, to be fair, oh wait, you know what? Actually, I'm thinking when Adonis Stevenson knocked him out. That's what I'm thinking of. Never mind. Andre, well, but you know, Chad Dawson actually did have to move down a weight class, but I still give him credit for that. I'll still give him credit. I also believe Oscar was robbed with Tito. Absolutely outboxed Tito to a huge degree. That's just my take. I think Oscar completely outboxed him in the first half, and I think that he got a little bit too cocky in the last 4 rounds. That's personally my take. I would have gave it to Oscar as well, but kind of gave up too many rounds in that fight. Let's see. Oscar ran the rest of that fight against Trinidad. That's why he lost. I tend to agree with you, Mr. Dantra. Teofimo Lopez might be working with Eddie Reynoso. That would be interesting, but you know, certain fighters who have worked recently, um, you know, it's not always transferred well. So we'll see. Who do you think has a better year, opponent wise, Canelo or Inoue? Well, Mr. Carl, are we talking about this year or last year? If we're talking about this year, well, you have to be talking about maybe you're talking about last year. I'm not sure. So yeah, because Canelo, this is no, that's right. He fought Jaime Munguia this year. Jesus, I'm tripping. My bad. Anyways, but okay, so that's tough. I might say Canelo by a smidgen, but the thing is that when you talk about hey, what's up, Mr. Farrell, world class, what's good, bro? So anyways, so yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about there. But anyways, what the fuck was I what the fuck was I even talking about for 2024? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Well, in a way, let's God, who else he fought? He fought Marlon Tapales, right? Or no, that was last year. What? No, he fought Luis Neri, and then he fought this recent dude. Okay. I mean, Neri's. I'm out to go with Canelo because I think Jaime Munguia is a legitimate A-grade level fighter. I don't. Luis Neri maybe A minus maybe. I'll give him A minus. I'll give him A minus. And then for TJ Doheny, I mean, I kind of have to go B at least on that one because he's 37 and he was a former champion, but he gave Inoue some fits. I'll give him that. All right, Oscar's footwork in that fight was great. It was. He should have threw a little bit more. I agree with Dontra on that one. Talking about Liam Paro, I believe Liam Paro gives Haney a great fight, possibly beats him. I agree with you. That's a very dangerous fight. Paro is extremely dangerous. I've already stated this. I think that he's the most dangerous Australian fighter that there is. He doesn't have the most amount of power that I've seen, but still decent power, decent speed, excellent counterpunching ability, can fight in any way that he wants. That dude's dangerous. Andre Ward is a dirty fighter. There are compilation videos of him low blowing, headbutting, and clinching too much. Well, there's certain things that he might do that are dirty boxing, but I do respect Ward as a fighter. But I'd have to check that out. Who's your pick for Bevo Better Beeve? I have to pick Better Beeve right now. Um, but we'll see about that. That's a tough fight because that's really going to depend on if Bevo is actually willing to push him back. And Bevo has the ability, but Better Beeve is just, dude's a monster. What do you think about Tank versus El Rayo? I'm not really super hot on that fight, to be honest with you, Mr. Farrow. I think that there's better fights out there, but to be fair, I'll give Gervonta Tank Davis the benefit of the doubt this time. Apparently, he tried to make the Lomachenko fight. Loma apparently turned it down because I think he wants Shakur versus Tank to happen and then kind of face whoever the winner is of that. And I don't blame him. I don't blame Lomachenko on that. And Shakur, I don't know what the fuck's going on with him. I mean, it's not the worst fight that I've seen, at least it's for a legitimate belt. But I've always kind of criticized Tank's resume a bit because, I mean, it's no offense against him, but a lot of these Latin fighters that he's fighting, in my view, are relatively one-dimensional. And I mean, they're like the people that actually criticize Canelo's resume, in my view, are the ones that should be criticizing Gervonta's, because the way that they talk about some of the fighters that Canelo was quote unquote just cherry picking, like Gervonta's actually facing guys that are relatively beatable. Like you're talking about Isaac Cruz. We've seen what happened to him against Jose Valenzuela. Mario Barrios is not an elite level fighter. I mean, I give him Ryan Garcia and Frank Martin. I'll give him those two as A grade level wins. But all those other fighters that he fought, they're pretty much beatable. It is what it is. Let's see. Who do you after this? Canelo will be the face of boxing. Probably Gervonta Tank Davis, but we'll see. Um, let's see. Jerry Bradley and Malnaji were quite enthusiastic about Lopez being in in let's see, in Reynoso's gym. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, like I said, I'm all for it. Let's see how they do. All right, I'm gonna read a few more comments, and then I'm gonna go back to the video actually, and then because I want to bring up a couple more points. But you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for commenting. Comment as much as you want, by the way. It just might take me a bit. Will there be an asterisk next to Canelo's legacy if he retires without rematching Bivol or fighting Benavidez? Um, well, I don't honestly, this is just my view. I don't really think that the Bivol rematch is necessary because when you talk about the Bivol rematch, that's not really a fight that he should have ever taken in the first place. I mean, to me, that would be like putting an asterisk on Terrence Crawford's resume if he lost to Janabek and saying, well, you need to rematch Janabek. I mean, to me, it's like to me, it was just a step too far. Benavidez, maybe, because Benavidez, I mean, I mean, Benavidez is actually even bigger than Bivol. Benavidez really should be fighting at the light heavyweight class. But the thing is, is that Benavidez, as long as he competes at the 168-pound weight class, Canelo's he's gonna have to try to fight him. So it is what it is. Let's see. Liam Paro is nothing to sneeze at. That guy is athletic, fast, and has very good technique. And on top of that, he's on a roll right now. I agree with you 100%. Let's see. Damn, new comments. All right. Better be about Jad Callum Smith and by a lot. He's a much underrated boxer. I agree. He's a very good boxer. Tank loves to fight flat-footed B-level Latin fighters. He's not that much different from Keith Thurman in that regard. I do tend to agree with you a little bit. There. I don't think that Tank Davis has as good of a resume as what people say. Gervonta Davis has had 5 of his opponents moving up in weight. That's actually not a bad point, Mr. Johnny Suave. That's not a bad point because these channels always love to mention that about Canelo, like, oh, how are you going to have Charlo move up a weight class? But then, when it comes down to, all this other stuff. Right. But, these guys love to talk all this shit about how allegedly Andrade or Charlo, they're not much better than Canelo Alvarez or this other fighter. But then they're only moving up one weight class, and apparently it's that big of a factor. That doesn't make any sense. but once again, when it came to Canelo about to fight Ilunga Makabu at the cruiserweight class, they said, well, don't fight Makabu, fight Alexander Usyk. So if you want to know, once again, how great someone truly believes someone actually is, you got to take a look at the standards. Floyd Mayweather Jr. did the same thing. Because if he was going to move up to middleweight, he didn't just have to fight any old basic middleweight fighter for the championship. He had to fight the most dangerous guy there. That's why, like, whenever they talk about Charlo or Andrade, whenever it was talks about Benavidez or something like that, they never said, Andrade, Charlo, you got to go fight Benavidez. You got to go fight Dimitri Bivol. They never said stuff like that. But with Canelo Alvarez, he always had to fight those guys. But anyways, let's see. Let's see. Canelo already lost convincingly to Bivol. It wasn't a close fight at all. Well, it definitely wasn't close enough for Canelo to win. I thought he got about 3 or 4 rounds out of there. But anyways, let's see. Mr. Farrow. I think if Bud fights Virgil Ortiz next, that's going to be a dangerous fight. Ortiz has A grade level power. He's good. I think that Crawford is better, of course. But the thing is that it's gonna be hard with it's going to be hard because I don't really quite know where Crawford is at. He didn't really quite look as great in that fight to me against Madrimov. I thought he underwhelmed a bit. But anyways, Benavidez has never unified a division, but this guy that's going to destroy Canelo. Well, Benavidez, in my view, does have a great chance. He has a great chance to beat Canelo because he's just so big, and he's relatively skilled. He's not a guy that is the most skilled in my view, but when you talk about him, he's dangerous for sure. Anyways. How can you even question on Canelo still fighting and them some? His resume speaks for itself. I agree with you. Do you think that Canelo is still the last of the greats when he retires? I think once again, sir. I think when you talk about this era, I think there's 4 all-time great fighters, and then the other ones, they might be great, but they're a little bit behind him. I think you're talking about Canelo, Crawford, Usyk, and Inoue. All those guys are greats. The only fighter of that category that I think needs to prove a bit more is Inoue. But we'll see. If Canelo was black, no discussion, a black thing that can get proused because he's Mexican. I somewhat agree with that. That some of these channels do have a little bit of a difficulty with that. I think that if Canelo, of course, was a quote unquote black fighter, that Dante and these guys, they'd be calling Canelo one of the greatest fighters. I have no doubt about that. All right, I'm gonna read one more comment, then I'm gonna go back to my YouTube video to read some of the comments because there's some other points I want to address. People are talking about Benavidez fighting the winner of Better Beef versus Bivol. I'll have to see it to believe it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to too. I'm gonna have to see that too. Because I already seen Benavidez against a washed up Vosdik in my personal view. I was not super impressed. I mean, he still clearly won the fight, but I just thought it could have been better. All right. Anyways, type as many comments as y'all want. I'll get back to them. But anyways, okay. So let's get back to some of this stuff here. So let's see. So you give Ward credit for winning the Super 6 series, but not Callum Smith for winning the Boxing World Series tournament and winning the WBC and lineal titles. So let's see overall. And Dantra responded with everything Canelo did. He's on steroids, not talent, not skill. Used steroids to beat guys who were even smaller than him, and lost to a smaller Mayweather who's even 40 years old. And Canelo was on PEDs, still lost. Callum Smith didn't win a Super 6. Stop lying. Callum was a weight bully. Wasn't he bigger than everyone he fought? Fuck out of here. Okay, so let me actually address those 2 comments once again as logically as possible. Well, first of all, Canelo has been caught on PEDs. So that's that is something that is going to have to fall around Canelo Alvarez around his career. It just is what it is. However, a bunch of other fighters, I believe, are also on PEDs. Once again, for those of you that know me, I believe that pretty much everyone in the snack program is on performance-enhancing drugs. All right, so it is what it is. But anyways, let's see here. I already addressed the Mayweather thing. But let's talk about Callum Smith. Yes, Callum Smith didn't win the Super 6 Series tournament. I believe that's how he got the Ring Magazine belt. Now, he was a weight bully. I do agree, but that's the reason why Callum Smith, in my view, was an A-grade level win. Not only because he has relative talent. Keep in mind, by the way, that Callum Smith gave Art Beterbiev in the most recent fight. I mean, he still pretty much got his ass kicked, but he gave him a tougher fight, by the way, than some of the other contenders there at the light heavyweight class. He gave him a tougher fight than Joe Smith Jr. He gave him a tougher fight, debatably, than Marcus Brown. Well, that was probably about the same. Marcus Brown gave him some rounds. And some other ones. Callum Smith, in my view, is at least an A- level fighter. He is not someone that I agree. I don't think he's the most talented fighter I've ever seen. But if Charlo or Andrade, had they gotten a win over Callum Smith, it would have been counted as an A-grade level win. The Callum Smith win, had Charlo or Andrade ever beaten him, it would have been the biggest win in their career. So it is what it is. Anyway, but let's see. Is there anything else that I need to address here? Let's see. Yeah, I don't really need to talk about this. Okay, let's talk about this comment here. Cotto. Okay, this is another point that I really want to bring up here. Miguel Cotto. And this is also going to transition into the Canelo fights, quote unquote, smaller fighters thing. Okay, so let's get into it. Cotto was small, moving up in weight. You can't be serious. And Cotto was nearly 40 years old, way done with boxing. You love to overlook facts. You just call out names. You give Canelo credit for beating Billy Joe, but don't give Crawford for credit for beating Madrimov. Well, actually, sir, I give Crawford credit for beating Madrimov. I gave him an A- level win. The problem is that I don't know how good Madrimov is. He has a great amateur pedigree, but once again, it doesn't always transfer to boxing. A lot of the times it hasn't. So we just don't know. Miguel Cotto, though, let's bring this up. So Miguel Cotto, by the way, at this time, he was refurbishing his career. Now, when he fought Canelo, to be fair, he was about 35 years old. So he was a little bit longer in the tooth. It's not like he wasn't. But Cotto was still looked at as one of the better fighters. He definitely was looked at as a big fighter for the middleweight division. Everyone was talking about a potential fight between Cotto and Gennady Golovkin. Everyone was talking about Canelo versus Golovkin, or pretty much that little triangle right there. Everyone was talking about him because Cotto had won the WBC in the Ring Magazine title by beating Sergio Martinez. Now, he beat a washed-up Sergio Martinez, but he still beat Sergio Martinez, and, he still was relatively impressive at that time in his career. Now, when Cotto was officially done was against Saddam Ali. That's when he was done for real. And he also tore his bicep in that fight, so he couldn't really do much there. But Cotto, no, he was an A-grade level fighter. Now, that being stated, was Cotto the same size as Canelo? No, he wasn't. Was he someone that maybe was as young as what he once was? No, he wasn't. But in my view, it's still an A-grade level win. In my view, what that win is comparable to is, say, kind of like the Lomachenko versus Devin Haney fight, where Lomachenko wasn't a guy that was top 10 pound for pound anymore, in my personal view anyway, but still an A-grade level fighter. That's kind of what that's comparable to, in my personal view. And that's when you really started to see Canelo Alvarez become a little bit greater as a fighter. Okay, but let's see. But before I address comments, let me also talk about this. Let me respond to a couple more on these before I go back. Let me also state this, because people, of course, love to say that Canelo loves fighting smaller guys. People love to say this whenever it comes to great fighters: Mayweather, Canelo, Pacquiao, whatever it may be. Canelo has beaten some smaller fighters, of course, like Amir Khan, like Miguel Cotto, like Josecito Lopez, other stuff like that. He's beaten smaller fighters like that. So yes, of course. He's also beaten guys that are bigger than him. And this is why I count Canelo as greater than Oscar, for example, or some of these other fighters, because Canelo is beating guys like Danny Jacobs. He's beating guys like Jaime Munguia. He's beating guys like Caleb Plant. He's beating guys like Callum Smith, Sergey the Crusher Kovalev. Gennady Golovkin was slightly bigger than him too when Canelo had fought him. And all these wins, in my view, are A-grade level wins. All these wins are A-grade level wins in my personal view. Some of them A- level wins, some of them A+ level wins. It depends on how you look at it. All those fighters were bigger than Canelo Alvarez, and if Canelo Alvarez did not have the boxing ability, he would have beat none of them. So, and Danny Jacobs, by the way, if I didn't mention Danny Jacobs, if Canelo, once again, when you talk about those fighters, the thing that makes Canelo so great as a fighter is not just that he can beat fighters that, once again, are great fighters. He can beat great fighters, once again, that are bigger than him, that are lengthier than him. And there's not many fighters that can do that. See, the thing is that people tried to compare the Madrimov and Crawford fight to, like, Canelo when he was fighting Dmitry Bivol, but it's not comparable. Yes, when Crawford was moving up, it was his fourth weight class, and Canelo, of course, was moving up his fourth weight class as well, but it's not similar whatsoever. It would be as if, like, if you're talking about, say, like, if Canelo was moving up, like I'm trying to think how to compare this. Like, basically, it would be like if Crawford's fourth official weight class was really the middleweight division. That's what it would really be more comparable to, because Canelo really doesn't even completely belong at the 168-pound weight class. Now, weight-wise, he does, kind of, but in terms of height and reach, it makes him a mix between middleweight and super middleweight. So that's something that has to be addressed. Let's take a look at some of the comments here. Let's see. Cotto was fighting in catchweights and middleweight way before Canelo. And the A side, when he fought Canelo, in terms of Cotto was completely done, how did he become a champion again after losing to Canelo? I agree with that. Now, to be fair, Cotto kind of won a belt over a fighter that wasn't that great. I think like Kamagai or something like that, a Japanese fighter that gave Robert Guerrero a very good fight. So it's not like Cotto won it over a super elite fighter, but Cotto was still an A-grade level fighter in that fight. And he gave Canelo some rounds. He was just a little bit too small, and Canelo on top of that was a little bit too skilled for Cotto. And Cotto is an all-time great fighter in my view. He's right on the same level as Oscar and Marquez and those guys. Cotto didn't become champion again. LMAO, bro, get the fuck out. Cotto was a junior welterweight. He wasn't a middleweight. He was moving up. Stop giving Canelo credit for sorry ass garbage wins. Well, I can't agree that that's a garbage win. And he's not a junior welterweight. Cotto is a legitimate welterweight because he's 5'7" with a 67-inch arm reach, and he hydrates to 160. That being stated, Cotto really never belonged at the middleweight class in the first place. So Cotto did that because it was the right move for his career. He wanted to become the first and only Puerto Rican at that time to become a four-weight division champion, and he did that. Cotto, in my view, is one of the all-time greats, and he still has had great boxing ability. He was a little bit revived at that time. It was an A-grade win. Now, if you want to say A-, that's up to you. But Cotto probably would have been in the top 20 pound per pound at that time. So that does have to go to Canelo. In my view, that win is right on par with Dan Haney and Lomachenko. It's right on par with uh, Crawford and Gamboa. To be quite honest with you, I think it's kind of right on par with that because Gamboa, he was definitely definitely did not belong in that weight class. Maybe the Gamboa win at the time was looked at as a bigger spectacle. I mean, well, I don't know. I don't know. That's tough. That's tough. I don't know, but I would compare it kind of to those. But yes, Cotto actually not only was he the WBC champion and Ring Magazine champion, by the way, Mr. Dantra, he did become a champion again at the junior middleweight division because he beat Kamagai or whoever that Japanese fighter was. Um, anyways, let's see. Loma ducked Tank because he knows Tank is a better fighter. Well, actually, years ago, I mean, Loma appeared not to take that fight right now to me because he appears like he wants the winner of Stevenson versus Tank to kind of kill two birds with one stone, but or to eliminate one of those guys. But years ago, Tank did have the opportunity to fight Loma, and he didn't fight him. So yep, and here Mr. Johnny Suave said it. Same thing I said. Cotto lost to Canelo. He moved back down to 154, fought Kamagai and won the WBO belt. Absolutely. Yes, he did. But let's see. Let's see. And I'm not gonna get in all this stuff. But anyways, Andrade won 2 vacant belts, same as Tank, just like Haney and Boots were gifted belts. Well, the thing is with Andrade is that I don't really know how fucking great that dude is, and this is also another thing that needs to be talked about. This conversation about Andrade and Charlo being legitimately like way better than Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders. I've just never personally seen that. And when you talk about Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant, by the way, let me just state this: they're both better boxers than Jamal Charlo. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. They're both better boxers than either Charlo brother. And I know that certain people are going to disagree with that, but it is what it is. When you talk about Billy Joe Saunders, the man was able to defeat Andy Lee, by the way, who knocked out Matt Korobov in the first round, who gave Jamal Charlo a hell of a fight. Actually, a certain amount of people think that Charlo could have potentially lost that fight against Matt Korobov. So I never understood this narrative about how Charlo was this elite level boxer. He's an A-grade level fighter. But he's not. Is he someone that is a Canelo? Is he someone that is, a Golovkin or someone like that? Is he this Andre Yasuji Ward? No. And skill wise, he's not Caleb Plant. He's not Billy Joe Saunders. He's not Andrade. He's not any of those guys. And Andrade, the thing that also has to be stated about him, let me get this thing up on my lap here. The thing that also has to be stated about him is that the man the man overall, even though he's a relatively skilled fighter, this narrative that he was 10 times greater than Caleb Plant, it just never made any sense because we never seen that in the ring. And then of course when we seen him in the ring finally against a real live champion and that of David Benavidez, the man the man pretty much got mollywopped. Caleb Plant was able to give for these guys, I want to debate that Caleb Plant is a C grade level fighter. Caleb Plant, he was able to give Canelo Alvarez, some rounds in the early part of the fight, but he was able to give David Benavidez even a tougher fight than Canelo Alvarez. And David Benavidez is twice the size as Canelo, or at least overall 20 pounds bigger than Canelo. All right, that's what ended up happening for that. So Canelo knocked out Caleb Plant, took his O away. Caleb Plant probably wasn't quite the same fighter ever again after that. Still a decent fighter though, and he gave David Benavidez a very tough fight in that fight. He gave him a very tough fight. Didn't even get dropped or stopped in that fight. Andrade went in there against David Benavidez, and he won the first 2 rounds, I thought. And then after that, he pretty much did terrible for the rest of the fight. So this narrative that Andrade was 10 times better than Caleb Plant, it was all hypothetical. No one ever knew. Now, I think that they're about on the same level, but the thing is that Caleb Plant was actually able to give, once again, David Benavidez a way tougher fight than Andrade. Andrade got stopped within 6 rounds. So once again, this narrative that Andrade or Charlo were way better than these quote unquote European bums, none of that is true. None of that is true. So it is what it is. Anyway, but let's see. Let me go back to some of my comments here. Um, okay. So let me go back. Okay.
rather see Zoo versus Virgil Ortiz. That fight was supposed to happen, but I think Zoo had to pull out. Um, I understand why people want Boots versus Crawford, but I think Boots would get exposed bad. He's never fought anyone A grade level. Well, that's definitely a part of it. Experience does play a role, even though, and that's also a thing that we got to talk about. Like Duran Boots Ennis, for example, like he like like he has 30 some fights or like getting close to it, but if he lost to Crawford, you wouldn't hear me overall state like, oh well, Duran, he's still clearly at 30 some fights, so it's the he clearly is at his absolute peak. Well, we don't know because he's in his prime, I would say, but the thing is about Duran Boots Ennis is that the man's never fought any A grade level competition, and you're going up to fight the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. It's just different. But anyway, people are talking about Benavides. Oh, yeah, I already read that one. All right. Didn't Cotto put the rehydration clause on Canelo so he wouldn't be too big on fight night? I gotta be honest with you. I cannot remember. It's very possible. I remember Cotto being the A side for that fight. That was the last time that Canelo Alvarez was the B side in his career. And it's very possible, but I know that Cotto mainly had his way in terms of negotiating terms for that fight. But let's see. Cotto was not looking forward to fighting GGG at all. I don't. Yeah, it didn't seem like he was. I think he thought that the Golovkin fight was a little bit too dangerous for his own good. And to be fair, he never belonged there in the first place. So it is what it is. So the Canelo fight was the perfect fight to make. Puerto Rico versus Mexico. The old great Puerto Rican legend versus the new and upcoming Mexican. Next hot. Overall prospect in boxing or the next star. That was pretty much the perfect fight to make. LWC. Canelo is so much bigger than Jamal Charlo. Also, LWC. Canelo is the same size as Bivol. I yeah, I agree with that. It's ridiculous. But let's see. Yes, Canelo did in a recent interview said that Cotto was the A side and had weight clause. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Remember that Cotto versus Saddam Ali fight? It was supposed to be his farewell fight to end his career on a high. Unfortunately, once again, yeah, Cotto suffered a torn bicep and he was completely done in the second half of that fight. He couldn't do anything. But anyways, people don't realize his size. It's a disadvantage to most fighters and beating bigger fights. I would agree. Talking about Canelo, of course, yeah, 5'7.5", with a 71-inch arm reach, he should have not been able to beat some of the names that he did. But anyways, Canelo and his team have mentioned fighting in Japan in December. Who could he fight? Charlo, Eubank, or Williams go for the IBF title? I I feel like the only fight that Canelo would really truly be interested in is the Charlo fight, to be really quite honest with you. I think he's been wanting that fight for a very long time. The problem is that I don't think Jamal Charlo is anywhere near ready for that fight. And Charlo, I think, would get hurt very bad. I think even the best version of Jamal Charlo gets hurt very bad against Canelo. But Charlo looked completely done to me in that last fight. He looked done. But Canelo might want to take that fight because he wants I think he wants to kind of put some recognizable names on his record that's aren't Benavides or Morel at the moment before maybe he takes that fight or potentially sails off into the sunset. I think Canelo is trying to add on as many potential names on his record right now as possible. Just not just not Benavides or Morel or Bivol or some of those other guys. And what I'll state is this: Canelo does have a right to ask for a lot of money against Benavides. He does, because Benavides is going to be his quote unquote replacement. Canelo has brought a lot of great things to the sport of boxing. And on top of that, Benavides is a decent amount bigger, so I don't think that it's a bad thing for Canelo to ask for a lot of money. However, he will have to, you know, he'll have to try to go after that fight if he is going to hold the titles at 160, and if Benavides is going to try to challenge him there. So yeah, Charlo looks like an addict. I agree. He's been out of his mind for a very long time now, unfortunately for him. But yeah. Anyways, okay. So let's take a look at some of these other comments. Let's see. All right. Do I want to read some of this? Let's see. Um, let me read some of this actually. In time, it took Crawford to fight 3 fights. Canelo fought 8 times. Inoue 7 and Usyk 6. That's 21 fights, 21 chances to get a cut, dislocate a shoulder, get a bad judgment, or break a hand. It's a violent sport where bad things happen. That's a different way to look at it, and it's backed up by history. Ali fought media core opponents. So did Hagler, including Hamsho 2 times to a degree. But once again, I do understand a little bit of the criticism with Canelo because if he is going to hold on to those belts, he is going to have to try and fight overall once again either David Morrell or David Benavides if they're going to compete there. Now, do I believe that Benavidez especially really belongs there? No, not necessarily. And that's why I don't mind Canelo asking for a whole lot of money. But um, so um, let me, I wasn't going to address this comment, but let me actually talk about Mike Tyson here. Because this guy is saying Mike Tyson considered the best champion of all time. Mike Tyson, actually, when you want to talk about actual overrated fighters, I really don't understand why Mike Tyson gets as much acclaim today as what he does. I mean, I guess it's because he was promoted so heavily and he was such an entertaining fighter. People don't know, but at one point in time, Mike Tyson was probably the most famous athlete on the planet. But when you talk about Mike Tyson legitimately being in the biggest fights of his career, not only did he legitimately lose, but I mean, like he literally basically got stopped in every single fight. When people really talk about Mike Tyson, Mike Mike Tyson is not as all-time great as people love to see. To be quite honest with you, it's actually a debate if he's an all-time great fighter. Because against Holyfield, against James Buster Douglas, and against Lennox Lewis, he didn't just lose those fights. He got stopped. He got stopped in every single one of them. So that's that has to be talked about. But anyway, okay. Ali also never ducked. Ali all fought all the best in their prime. Well, Ali, listen, every fighter to a certain degree, they're not just going to get in the ring with anybody at any willing time. There has to be a reason for it. And for those of you that don't know, Ali actually was trying to avoid Ken Norton, and he wanted George Foreman to fight him so he could take him out. And he was offering George Foreman a rematch because Ken Norton was giving him hell. So a lot of people actually don't know that. But anyway. That was in the new George Foreman movie, by the way. You can see a scene on that. But let's see. Let's see what Donch had to say here. You're a weirdo for saying that Andy Lee was an A-grade win. He was well past his prime, bro. He retired after that fight. Caleb Plant is a B-level fighter, but not elite, bro. He's more of a gatekeeper. Let's see. Is there anything else I need to address here? Anyway, what he does is so perfect. Yeah, really, Joe Saunders, who beat a washed Lemieux. Well, the thing is that Lemieux wasn't really washed at the time. Lemieux was washed now. Like he's done. He's done now. But that was the time when Lemieux was coming off of 3 victories, who was already beaten by GGG. Well, Billy Joe is, once again, in my view, he's an A- level win at the very least. But he embarrassed Lemieux that still was championship level quality. It's just that he couldn't get any of the belts because that was the time when Canelo and Golovkin were in that weight class, and he had already lost to Golovkin at that time. But anyway, let's see. Um, let's see. Canelo doesn't belong at 175 because he sucks, not because he's too small. Well, Canelo definitely does not belong at the 175-pound weight class when you talk about size. Um, anyways, so let's see what he says. He says, let me do the read more thing so I can see all this. Canelo doesn't have the skills to perform there, but he is big enough. Defeated Kovalev, who is bigger than most light heavyweights. LMAO, he just didn't have the skills to beat Bivol or better Beef. Let's just be honest. If size was a problem, he should have lost to Kovalev. Instead, he destroyed Kovalev because Kovalev wasn't skilled and he was a washed fighter who lost to Bivol. Well, he actually Oh yeah, well he's talking about Canelo. Okay, because of skill now, Wade need Doug Bivol 168. Anyway, okay. Well, here's the thing. First of all, when we talk about Canelo losing to Bivol, the rematch at 168, that basically would have been a suicide mission. There was no way that Canelo was going to take that rematch at 168 nor 175. There's no reason for that fight to happen because Bivol is way too big. And on top of that, if you lose to Bivol at 168, it's even worse for your career. And if you win against Bivol at 168, people are just going to say that you weight drained the May way. So I don't think that it was a smart move for Canelo either way. And I've always advised fighters that when they come off a bad loss like that, not to rematch those fighters, very quickly anyway. So Canelo, in my view, actually made the right decision. But talking about the Kovalev thing, actually that Kovalev fight, it was a much tougher fight than what people remember. Up until probably about the final couple of rounds, that fight was very competitive back and forth. Now, Canelo, in my view, still was winning that fight, but it was competitive going back and forth. But Kovalev was not as strong, and when I say strong, he was not as elite at that point in time as what he once was. Now, in my view, it still was an A- level win because Canelo really doesn't even belong at the light heavyweight class in the first place. And Kovalev was still an A- level fighter. It's not like he was completely washed because for those of you that don't remember, he was coming off of wins over Eleider Alvarez. Eleider Alvarez, of course, stopped Kovalev, not too long before that. But then Kovalev got his revenge in the rematch. He completely outboxed him all 12 rounds. Then against Anthony Yard, he pretty much dominated that fight, had a few scares, here and there, but ended up stopping him. So that's what Kovalev was able to do. That's what he was able to do. So that needs to be stated right there. So Kovalev, the thing is that he just wasn't as strong of a champion anymore. It was still an A- level win, but the thing is that the difference is that Canelo was getting in the ring with an A+ level skilled heavyweight this time against Bivol. Kovalev at that time, first of all, I'm not quite sure if Kovalev was ever as skilled as a Bivol, but the thing is that he was getting in there against a fighter that was more in their prime, and on top of that, a fighter that was more A+. It was still a great win over Kovalev. It was still A-, but it wasn't quite, the same, because if Canelo fought better Bivol, those fights should not really be that competitive because of the size difference. But anyway, okay. So let's, and once again, to that point of Andy Lee. Andy Lee, not an A grade level fighter in my view, but a solid B grade level fighter. Once again, that's the man that was the first defeat in Matt Korobov's career. By the way, who was known for having a great amateur pedigree. And this is why we cannot always count great amateur pedigrees, because take a look at Matt Korobov's career. The man had such a great amateur pedigree, was expected to do so much in professional boxing, and the man has never won an official belt. He's lost every big fight in his career. So it is what it is. Got knocked out by Andy Lee in the first round. The same guy that also gave Peter Cole in the draw, by the way, when he was undefeated. So Andy Lee was not some bum, but I don't think that he was an A grade level fighter either. And that's who Billy Joe Saunders was able to clearly defeat. All right, so Billy Joe deserves some credit. But anyways, let's see some of this. Let's see. Nobody knew John Ryder, Rocky Fielding, and Canelo fought them. LMAO. Well, that's relatively true. I assume that you're talking about Demetrius Andrade. Demetrius Andrade. The problem is with him is that he's way too big of a threat overall for the amount of reward that he brings, and that's a little bit of his fault, because Demetrius Andrade could have signed with the PBC a very long time ago. He also could have accepted that Charlo fight many years ago. He decided to pull out because he thought he was getting lowballed, and I get it. At the end of the day, we all need to understand our value, and if you think you deserve more, it's fine. But in my view, it would have just been better to bite the bullet, because had he defeated one of the Charlo brothers, he would have been so much more known. And it didn't come to fruition, partially because of that. So that was a big problem with Andrade. That was a big problem with Andrade. Anyway, so let's see. Let's see. You know why there's nobody? This is Anthony Alvarado. You know why there's nobody to fight? He beat them all. Only fights people can make for him is above his weight division. If you match Munguia or Belanga against Benavidez, nobody would have shit to say. But it's because of the greatness that Canelo has. People have high expectations. I do slightly agree with you, sir. Why does Benavidez get a pass for Duck and Morrell, but Canelo has to fight Morrell to make it make sense? He's a little guy, but his greatness is big. I pretty much agree with everything that you stated there. But the only thing that I will state is that if Canelo is going to be considered as debatably the #1 pound-for-pound fighter, or a guy that is within the top 5 pound-for-pound, he is going to have to take the fights within his weight class, and the fights that are going to have to keep him in there with Crawford and Inoue and Usyk in terms of the pound-for-pound rankings. Because right now, Canelo would be #4 or #3 on my pound-for-pound list. I can't quite have him #1 because Usyk, of course, has that Fury win, and Crawford last year got that Spence win. So it is a little bit about recent wins. But anyway, let's see. So if it isn't a light heavyweight or David Benavidez, which is also a light heavyweight, it's a cherry pick. Didn't everybody say that's about? I agree with you slightly. But let's see. Why don't you ever mention IBFP channel? Blah blah blah. All you do is mention black channels. Actually, let me talk about this real quick, and then I'm going to once again, I'm gonna go into more comments about the Canelo resume thing. Well, the reason why I don't talk quite as much about the IBFP is because the IBFP, in my view, even though there might be some motivations here and there from him, I don't find him super racially motivated. I find him, if I find one of his narratives to be a bit biased, it's usually because, in my view, he's trying to appease a little bit more of his subscribers, which of course is still worth a look at in a review every once in a while. But when you talk about Dante's Boxing Nation and Aki TV and some of these other guys, like their racial motivation and their racial bias, like it's so apparent that that basically that they're very contradictory with their statements. So that's why I like to review them the most. But anyway, because they have the most revisionist history narratives. But anyways, let's see. We've already talked about that. Okay, so this is pretty much going to be the last part, and then I'll answer any questions that I have on my comment live section. Let's see. This is what Johnny Swab says. He says, I ain't forget Dante's Boxing Nation picked Charlo to win and knock out Canelo because he said he's a lesser version of Brian Gastano. I agree with you, sir. Thank you for stating that. Dante's Boxing Nation and all these channels, and listen, a lot of boxing fans love to do this shit. But Dante's Boxing Nation, because we're talking about him in this example, they love to do this bullshit where they love to they love to say that Canelo was this average Mexican fighter, and that the Charlo brothers, that they 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 would totally beat Canelo Alvarez. They're a decent amount more skilled than Canelo. That's why Canelo avoided them, blah blah blah. And then every time those fights were about to get announced, it's always some bullshit. Oh, the size. Oh, Charlo's moving up a weight class. Oh, Charlo's not the same fighter anymore. Oh, it's this. And that's not the only fighters that they did that with. Remember, Aki, TV, and Dante, they stated at one point in time that Canelo was avoiding Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant. And then when he fought those guys, what happened? All of a sudden, they were weak European white boys. And then on top of that, Dante also stated that Canelo wouldn't fight at the light heavyweight class. He wouldn't fight Dimitri Bivol. He got in the ring against Bivol. And then what did he state? He said, well, the reason why Canelo's getting in the ring with Bivol is because he must think that Bivol is an easier style because he's European than what Jamal Charlo is. So once again, Dante's knowledge of boxing is very narrow. It's very basic. And basically, a lot of the shit that he ranks off of is completely racially motivated, and including the skills of certain fighters. And that's why I also talk about every race of fighter or every race of person. They have their own little privilege. Once again, when you talk about certain boxers, if they're a Caucasian fighter, they're not going to get criticized as quote unquote boring, quite as much overall as what the black fighters will. But if you take a look at the black fighters, for example, they'll be known as quote unquote slicker, or better boxers sometimes than what they may actually be, or better defensively, because people sometimes take a look at a great black fighter like the Charlo brothers, and they immediately, associate them with Floyd Mayweather or that of a Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. The Charlo brothers are nothing like Floyd Mayweather Jr. nor Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker. They don't fight anything like them. Now, Terrence Crawford, yes, when you talk about Shakur Stevenson, Gervonta Tank Davis, yes, you can kind of compare those guys a little bit, because those are guys that can be counted as slicksters. But once again, Dante just, he compares things off of such a narrow, knowledge-based view, and that's why I like to review a lot of his videos, by the way. But yes, I remember when Dante's Boxing Nation said that shit, and he said that who knows, Canelo might be an easier fight for Charlo than what Castano is. That's what he was saying. And then when Canelo Alvarez got in the ring with Jamel Charlo, whooped his ass from pillar to post, won every single round basically within that fight. What did Dante say? Oh, well, it was clear that Canelo Alvarez was way bigger. Like, well, wait a minute. I thought you said that the Charlo brothers were way better than Canelo. So why, once again, Dante and a lot of these guys, they love to talk all this shit. But then all of a sudden, when, shit comes to hit the fan, or push comes to shove, all of a sudden they don't believe that shit anymore. Once it's really about to happen, that's how you know, once again, that they don't truly believe that shit. Because every single time that it's about to become a reality, all of a sudden they start to back off. All of a sudden they don't believe in their, little narrative anymore. So I agree with you. But anyways, and by the way, let me also state this about Charlo. Charlo and Canelo were more similar in size than what people are trying to let on. Charlo and Canelo, Charlo really should be fighting at the middleweight class. The man is 6 foot with a 70-something inch arm reach. The man shouldn't really even be fighting guys like Brian Castano, who's about 5'9", at the junior middleweight division. Like the man is bigger than Lara. The man is bigger than Castano. The man is bigger than almost everybody there, other than some other fighters who also probably should be fighting at middleweight, like Tony Harrison and, Julian J. Rock Williams or Jarrett Hurd. But it's like at the end of the day, it's like, no, Jamel Charlo, not only did he rehydrate heavier than Canelo, by the way, which isn't always a factor because sometimes when they're moving up in weight, they balloon up in weight in order to gain a little bit more mass. But Jamel Charlo, once again, he's a guy that should be easily fighting at the middleweight class, easily. So Canelo, once again, that fight, I mean, of course, it was a factor because Jamel Charlo had never fought above 154 before. But at the end of the day, they were more similar in size than what people try to let on. So when people keep trying to tell you this stuff about, oh, Charlo, he was moving up in weight 2 weight classes. Well, he was, but it's not like it was a Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence Jr. situation where you could clearly see the size difference, or Rigondeaux versus Lomachenko, or, like that of Kell Brook and Golovkin, or, like that of Yuriorkis Gamboa versus Crawford. Charlo had some attributes. He was just so afraid to use them because he didn't believe he could beat Canelo. He didn't believe that. You could tell in the press conference. But, it is what it is. And what were they saying about Jamel Charlo? They were saying that he's debatably top 5 pound for pound. Champ side had him #1 pound for pound. Remember on his list? Then all of a sudden, Charlo gets his ass whooped against Canelo. Haven't heard shit about that man since. Haven't heard shit about that man since. Anyway, but once again, Dante loves to talk all this shit. about how this guy is limited and blah blah blah, and that this guy should beat him. And it's not just him. A lot of boxing fans do this as well. They love to talk shit about how good this guy is, and that, oh, this guy is going to lose against this guy. But then when they beat that guy, all of a sudden that guy is a bum, or they're not as good as what they thought they were. So people once again love doing that, and that's why that can get very obnoxious. But anyways, but let's see what Dontra said. He said Charlo could have won, but he came in for a check. Well, I agree, sir, that he came in for a check, but let's read the rest of this. He didn't try to win. These boxers just want to get paid. Didn't even try. You can't possibly think Charlo tried that fight. If he tried, he could have beaten Canelo. I'm sorry, sir. I can't agree with that one. For those of us that know boxing, it's very obvious that Canelo has a higher skill set than Charlo. Just is what it is. I've seen it in fights repeatedly. If Charlo really was more skilled than Canelo, he would have never lost to someone like Tony Harrison in the first place. Isn't that very interesting, by the way, how these LDBC and new media channels, just talking about racial motivations, they love to do this shit about how they wanted to put Jermell Charlo in the top 5 pound per pound, but he lost to Tony Harrison. And they kept trying to feed you this bullshit about how elite Tony Harrison was. Tony Harrison had never won a belt in his career and got knocked out in every big fight in his career, by the way, by that of Jarrett Hurd and by that of someone else before he fought Jermell Charlo. And then he got in the ring with Jermell Charlo, and he actually beat Jermell Charlo, or it was a very competitive fight. So people try to compare that to when Lomachenko, for example, lost to Orlando Salido. It's not comparable because Lomachenko was fighting a championship level caliber fighter in his second professional fight. Charlo already had like 30 some fights in his career. So that's why, once again, people love to mention this bullshit about how Canelo, like, oh, he's still the same fighter after all these years. He hasn't made any adaptations whatsoever. Right. But when it came to Jermell Charlo, for example, he was a changed man. He was a better fighter immediately after the Tony Harrison fight. So, come on, man. It is what it is. Anyway, but let's see. Much smaller. He walks around at about 190. He's a weight bully. I agree. He is a little bit of a weight bully, 154. I agree with you. But anyways, so I'm not really quite sure if there's much more for me to read here. Anyways, okay, that appears pretty much to be about it for this little thing. But I'm going to read my comment section now. Let's see. Okay, let me see some of your comments. Okay. Let's see. It won't be Eubank. I mean, I'm really hoping it's not Eubank because Eubank is not really a fight that anyone really wants. Let's see. LDBC Canelo cherry picks white fighters. Also LDBC. Madrimov was a great win for Crawford. Do these people listen to the words coming out of their mouth? I agree with you, sir. I agree. When Dante's Boxing Nation and some of these other guys, when they talk about Canelo Alvarez, every Caucasian fighter that he fights is allegedly this bum. But then every fighter that Crawford fights, like Victor Postol or Madrimov or someone like that, or Aegis Kavalauskas, they're like, wow, can you believe it? Take a look at this Olympian Aegis Kavalauskas. I agree with you. And they're not the only ones that do that. But once again, we're only talking about Dante here and some of those LDBC channels. So we're only bringing up them. Anyways, Bam Rodriguez has a quiet, solid record. 2 Hall of Famers, and Sonny Edwards dominated all 3. That's a very good point, sir. Bam Rodriguez, in my view, he's on the top 10 pound per pound list. I hope to eventually see Inoue versus that of Inoue versus Jesse Bam Rodriguez. We'll see. Yes, actually, he does have a decent resume. He has Sarung Visai. He also has Carlos Cuadras on there. Probably be a great level fighter, but still, he dominated and stopped Sarung Visai. He stopped Juan Francisco Estrada, and he also beat Sonny Edwards. Sonny Edwards, actually, by the way, very comparable to that of a Billy Joe Saunders a little bit. But I would say that Billy Joe Saunders was better than that of a Sonny Edwards, to where Sonny Edwards is a very good boxer. He was a decent champion, undefeated. He just didn't have elite level power. But I would still say it's about an A- level win in my personal view. Munguia versus Plant should be next. That'd be a hell of a fight, man. I'd love to see that. But to be honest with you, I think a lot of people want to see Berlanga versus Plant next because of the amount of shit that they've been talking. Let's see. Ducknello is a cherry picking clown. Well, what I'm going to say is this, sir. I don't think that Berlanga is an A grade level fighter. I agree with you there. But let's see. I remember Billy Joe Saunders was the underdog against David Lemieux. I actually don't personally. I don't remember that, in all honesty. But I do remember that fight was supposed to be competitive, and it wasn't competitive whatsoever. And that really showed Billy Joe Saunders' class. He was able to box circles around that man. Billy Joe Saunders is a beautiful boxer at his absolute best, and that's why, you got to watch Billy Joe Saunders. That's why I'm saying, like, people didn't watch Billy Joe Saunders enough sometimes when they're commenting this shit about how much of a bum that he was. No, he was never a bum. He was one of the best middleweights in the world. Anyways, okay. Let's see. Canelo versus Berlanga is basically Davis versus Romero 2.0. That's not the worst comparison. But take a guess on Dante's Cheeseburger Nation and Trash TV. Picked was a great fight and a cherry pick fight. I actually agree with you on that, sir. Once again, these guys love to criticize Canelo and some of the fighters for allegedly fighting weaker fighters. But then when it comes to Gervonta Tank Davis, they love to tell you this bullshit. And this video is also comparing the resume of Gervonta Tank Davis and some of those other fighters. Gervonta Tank Davis has a very overrated resume, very overrated. When you talk about, Isaac Pitbull Cruz, Mario Barrios, what's his name, Hector Garcia, those guys are not A-grade level fighters, man. Like, come on. And we already seen that with Isaac Cruz. Like, I kept trying to tell people that Isaac Cruz is not an A-grade level fighter, and we finally seen it against Jose Valenzuela. So yeah, no, I agree with you. But let's see. Anyways, okay, let's go. Never liked Dante's boxing nation. He's always been biased. Well, he brings up some points in my view that are somewhat relevant, but I agree. His racial motivation, um, it just goes too far, and that's part of the reason why I like to review his videos. But anyways, to be honest, Jamel should have never been at 154, more like 160. I agree with that, man. I agree with that. Jamel's a big motherfucker overall at 154. I agree with you. Let's see. Berlanga is definitely a cherry pick, but Nella still has a better resume than anybody right now. I would agree with you. I would agree with you. But let's see. Fundora should be a middleweight too. Like, how you 6'6" and make 154? Nah, man, I agree with you there. That's pretty fucking ridiculous. How a fighter at 6'6" and then 154 can fucking make, or excuse me, 6'6" with the however long his goddamn arm reaches. Now that's ridiculous. I agree with you. That's absolutely that shouldn't be allowed. Bevo is even 6 foot tall. So are the Charlos. Jamel drained for years to say 154. I agree, and so did Jamal. Both the Charlo brothers, once again, they were a little bit of weight bullies. To be honest with you, Jamal Charlo is bigger than what Canelo is. But anyway, let's see. Testing positive for an illegal substance definitely hurts his resume. All the catch weights and dehydration clauses. Well, the dehydration clauses to a certain degree, but there's a lot of other fighters that have done that. Now, when you want to talk about the steroids, that's something that, in my view, if you want to talk about that, that's up to you. But if we're going to use that, then we also have to do the same thing. We have to do the same thing with John Jones. We have to do the same thing with Sugar Shane Mosley. We have to do the same thing overall with those guys. So yeah, that's what we have to do there. A few years back, I did have a high stock in Jamal Charlo. Wanted to see him versus Jacobs, GGG, Canelo. Back then, those would have been really good fights. But sad that they put their talent to waste. I agree with you. Uh, I got to make a video about some of the most underwhelming resumes and fighters of this generation. Because two of the fighters that would definitely make that list would be Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Bubo Andrade. And speaking of Andrade, let's go to this next one. Speaking of Bubo Andrade, when is his next fight? Because David did a number on him. I've actually been looking forward to Andrade's next fight because I want to see what he looks like. The problem is that I have no idea. Andrade, to be honest with you, it almost seems like he's done. I don't know when his next fight is going to be. I've not heard any news about it whatsoever. So that's the problem. I really have no idea, to be quite honest with you. No idea whatsoever. But the fight that I would love to see him in, maybe Caleb Plant. That'd be very interesting. Or Edgar Berlanga. Jaime Munguia would be another potential interesting fight. I'd love to see him in any of those fights. Janabek, but I'm not quite sure if Andrade is going to take any of those fights. We'll see. Let's see. Did you see Charlo side by side with Bevo? He looked bigger. Yeah, no, Charlo's a big dude, man. He's big. I mean, I think that Bevo is bigger, of course, more than likely. But no, yeah, no, he's big. No, Jamal Charlo really should be fighting at 168. He's the same fucking size as Jaime Munguia and Caleb Plant. No, I agree with you. That's why I'm saying, like, Canelo Alvarez, like, yeah, he balloons up a little bit in weight, but dude, it's like he's 5'7" with a 71-inch arm reach. You're talking about Andrade and Charlo and some of these other guys, dude. They're 6 foot to 6'2". So like people aren't getting that. But anyways, a lot of these new guys are watching TikTok, always spreading misinformation. They haven't been watching boxing closely over the last few years. I somewhat agree with that. Remember, if you try hard enough, you can critique anybody's career and make them look less. For example, I could say Mayweather beat Oscar after Oscar had already got knocked out. Absolutely, that's a great point. And once again, that's why we need to talk about the quote unquote resumes. We have to keep the same standards. For example, when we want to talk about Crawford's resume, for example, great fighter. But the thing that also has to be stated is that Terrence Bud Crawford, by the way, like people love to give him um, every the people like love to give Crawford credit for beating Kell Brook and Amir Khan, and then they'll love to state overall that Canelo, for example, that he beat these washed up fighters when they were still champions. Like washed up fighters are fighters that can no longer win belts anymore. That's what washed up fighters are. All right, that's what washed up fighters are. But anyway, all right. I remember Jacobs ran up on Charlo. LOL, that maybe Gabe planned the blueprint to slap Charlo. Yeah, I remember when Plan did that. I remember when Plan did that shit. And apparently it was because Jamal Charlo was trying to grab onto his face. So something's been up with Jamal Charlo for the past few years. But apparently the man went through a hell of a divorce, and he's not in the best of places right now. So I don't fucking know what's going on with him. But anyways, I'm not. I think that's probably about it for right now. More than likely, but we'll see overall what ends up happening. Um, I'm probably. I might try to go live. I'm not really quite sure for this weekend for the Canelo fight. I'll have to see, but I do know that it's an excellent card. Before I end the video, though, for any of you guys that have any comments or questions, go ahead, type them right now. I'll answer as much as possible. Yeah. Um, yeah, so yeah, of course it's gonna be a great card. Canelo versus Berlanga. I don't really think that that's the best main event, but it's okay. And then Laura versus Danny Garcia. That's decent. Caleb Plant versus that one dude. The fuck is his name? God, I can't remember the guy's name. Some Caucasian fighter from America. And then of course you have Steven Fulton and also Rolly Romero on the card. Anyway, but let's see. You are definitely right about Tank's resume, overrated as hell. Tank is the lightweight Mike Tyson, if you ask me. B plus to A minus, but elite talent will probably get washed. I don't know about that, man. To be honest with you, what I'm going to state is this: I actually think Javante is an elite level talent. I think that I think that he's the most talented guy within those weight classes. The problem is that he just doesn't have much talent on his fucking resume. That's the problem. I would favor him. I think that he's more skilled, and I would favor him over guys like Devin Haney and I mean Shakur. There's certain things that he actually might be able to do that Javante can't quite do as much. But Javante just has the level of power and the level of skills to compete with him. So I would actually pick Javante to beat all those guys. But the thing is that I need to see it. That's the thing. Is like once again, these guys keep giving credit to Javante Tank Davis for defeating these guys like fucking Hector Garcia and all these other guys, and it's like, dude, come on, like those are not A grade level fighters. But what they love to say is that Javante, he's fighting some of the most, he's fighting some of the most challenging styles out there. It's like, dude, come on. But anyway, haven't heard much from South Crack or Ego since they booted from the LDC for going against Haney. Oh, is that why overall man. Um, Listen, in boxing ego, to be quite honest with you, I don't mind his channel. I actually think that he is a relatively good channel. But that dude is so far up Javante Tank Davis's ass that he's starting to now go against people like Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson. He keeps fucking trying to tear them down because he he wants to protect the PBC overall black fighter in Javante Tank Davis. And once again, they're doing that because Javante not only is a great fighter, and could be looked at as later on maybe potential number one pound for pound, but also he could be the new face of boxing later on after Canelo. So that's why they're protecting him so much. But anyway, so let's see, because that man has been on Devin Haney's ass ever since. But let's see. I would like to see Tank versus Loma or Tank versus two. Or I assume that you mean Tio. Yeah, Teofimo, you said it right there. Both of those would be great fights. I would love to see those fights. Both of them would be great. What's interesting is that would we get the narrative from Dante or some of these other guys that Lomachenko is no longer the same fighter anymore because he would be about 37 years old by the time that Javante Tank Davis would fight him, or that Tio, probably should have lost that Jermaine Ortiz fight, or would we get the narrative from them that, he's fought them at the best point in time in their career? So once again, that would be interesting. Okay. Bevo / Better Beef is the most significant fight since Fury / Usyk. I agree with that. I agree with you on that. That's a hell of a fight. That's for unification. And that is a brutal fight. Brutal fight. Anyway. I think Tank will lose against Teofimo and Boots. Well, shit, that man better lose against Boots. Boots overall is a fucking natural welterweight to 154 pounder, and the man's got elite level power. I mean, once again, yeah, Javante Tank Davis should lose that fight. There's no way in hell that Javante Tank Davis and Jerron Boots Ennis should ever be in the same ring ever. You know, but it is what it is. Anyways, yeah, Boxing Ego turned his back on Haiti and Shakur, and I thought that was fake as hell. Well, the reason why he's fucking doing that once again is because he has to protect his little boy Tank. That's the reason why he's doing that. Because Gervonta Tank Davis once again is a new flavor. You know, he's a new flavor of, you know, of boxing for these guys. They have to protect him because he has the biggest potential star power out of all of them. So that's why you say, like, Boxing Ego, like, he loves to go after Canelo sometimes, or loves to go after numbers of Terrence Crawford or Canelo or something like that, or loves to go after their resume. But then when it comes to Gervonta Tank Davis, he'll say, why are you pocket watching? Why are you hating on Gervonta Tank Davis? Why are you doing that? You know, so the man is clearly a major fan of Gervonta Tank Davis. It is what it is. You know, but it's, yeah, that's the reason why he's going after Haney and Shakur. He's going really after their ass because of that. Anyway, so you really believe everybody on Snack is on PEDs, even guys on Mario Barrios? Yes, I do. Mainly, yes, I do. They are working once again with Mr. Victor Conti, who was one of the top former PED suppliers in all the world towards former athletes. Yes, yes, absolutely, I do. No doubt about it. And on top of that, there's been pictures to where you can take a look and their bodies look bigger, it looks thicker, they look in more condition, or they look in better form once they join the snack program. Absolutely, no doubt about it. You know, so it's whatever. I want to see Boots versus Tim Tszyu or Jamel Charlo. That'd be a great fight, but I would love to see Jerron Boots Ennis kind of fight at the welterweight division first, but we'll see. Unless of course Boots really wanted to get in the ring with Crawford, but in my view, that's kind of a fight that shouldn't really happen. But we'll see overall about that. It'll be potentially interesting. Um, but yeah, man. Um, but yeah, I let me see overall if I can hold on one sec. I gotta check something here on my phone, and then I might be able to do some. Just hold on 1 second here. Mhm. And then I may uh I may actually, um, let's see. I may actually, would anyone be interested in terms of actually talking within this video? I gotta, fuck, I gotta remember how to do it in all honesty. But how the fuck do I add someone to this? Anyways, if any of you guys want to actually join the conversation and talk to me on this, you guys certainly are invited. I'll have one person on at a time. Y'all can ask you questions or talk about whatever you want. And then overall, yeah. But if not, then I can just end it here soon. Oh, yep, I found the invite button right there. Okay, so if any of y'all are actually interested in that, then yeah. Damn, I wish I could join the live. Well, if you actually want to, man, if you're able to, if you're not busy, you can. I can invite you. But if you're busy at the moment, bro, it's all good. Just let me know. If anyone wants to join the live, talk real quick overall once again, few minutes, then I'll give some other people a chance to talk. Yeah, we could do that. I ain't got no problem with it. Let's see. People think Victor Conti changed. I said, nah, he just knows how to hide it. But absolutely, I agree with you. I agree with you on that one. No doubt about it, man. Um, but yeah, but yeah. Anyways, okay. But yeah. God, was there any more comments on that video that I needed to check out real quick? Hold on, let me take a look. All right. I don't think there's really much else to talk about in all honesty. Um, let me before I once again, just in case anyone does want to join the live, I'll talk about one more conversation or two more other things just to get some things out of the way. Let's talk about, and nah, I can join it now. You can drop the link. You can join. You can. Okay, cool. God, okay, that's the fucking, okay, hold up. Let me think I think I got to copy it like this. Okay, let's see. I think it's this, or actually, hold up. Yeah, hold on. That's the wrong one, sir. Hold on, that's the wrong one. Um, hold on. All right, this should be the right one, I think, or it might even be the same fucking thing. I don't know. But anyway, see if you can join the live. If you can't, then I did something wrong. I'm gonna share your live with my Facebook buddies who's big on boxing. Oh, thanks, G, bro. I really appreciate it, man. I really appreciate that. Um, Yeah, if you can't get in the live, man, I'm gonna have to figure it out because I don't do this very often. Um, so yeah. Hopefully you can join though. Oh shit, man. but yeah, and also thank all y'all for who really commented and paid attention to my video, man. Yeah, sorry I have not posted as much as of late. But yeah, just some things going on, busyness. But yeah, there's a lot of boxing news now, so yeah, we're going to be doing more of that stuff. But yeah, I'm going to try to wait, see what's going on, Mr. Farrell here. If anyone else wants to join, maybe a little bit before him, or you want to join with us, I can maybe have 2 people on. Yeah, and then we'll see what ends up happening. But yeah. Um, But before he joins, and Mr. Farrell, by the way, if you're having problems, if you can't join, let me know, and I'll try to figure it out. But anyways, so let's talk about Inoue real quick because some people actually may want to talk about. So Inoue actually got a recent win over TJ Doheny, the Irish fighter. I personally wouldn't call that necessarily a quote unquote A grade level win, but this is the fight, in my view, that does need to happen next, and that is the fight of Junto Nakatani. Junto Nakatani is a fighter overall that I'm not quite sure is top 10 pound for pound quite yet, but he's definitely top 20 pound for pound. There is talks about him facing, I believe, Takuma Inoue or whatever his brother's name is. Perfect promotion, have that on the other card, and then fight Naoya Inoue. Right there on the right there on the next event. That would be great. I think Tank will retire undefeated. He will beat El Rayo Shakur and maybe like 2 more big names, then lead the sport. It's possible, man. It's possible. I really hope that he fights a little bit more, but we'll see, bro. We'll see. I'm not really quite sure. But that's I would hope that he fights some more big names, but we'll see. We'll see overall, man. But yeah. I'll wait a couple more minutes for Pharaoh, and then if he's not able to join in, then yeah, I'm just gonna end it because there's not much else to talk about here. But anyways, yeah, no, I agree with you. I hope that Javante Tank Davis fights some bigger names. We'll see overall what ends up happening. But yeah, yeah. But for any of y'all that want to share this video, this live overall, Mr. Farrell, feel free, bro. Thank y'all for tuning in. And like I said, I'll give him about 1 or 2 more minutes and then probably gonna end it. But yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. Let me know if there's any topics that you'd want me to talk about in the future. I may try to go live for the Canelo Alvarez card. I'm not really quite sure about that. Might be a busy day, but I'm gonna have to see on that at the current moment in time. So yeah. So yeah. Alrighty, alrighty. I'm trying to think, but yeah, that might be about it for today, I guess, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Was hoping Farrell maybe could join in, but maybe I maybe I didn't get the invite right. I'm not really quite sure. I'll figure it out next time. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. If any of y'all want to do a live debate sometime, if Dontra wants to come in here for a live debate, I don't mind that either. Great talking to y'all, and I'll see y'all later. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the live in the video, and I'll see y'all later. Peace out.